To some new developments in the fight over gun control and your Second Amendment rights. 3 Republican senators, Rand Paul of Kentucky, Ted Cruz of Texas, and Mike Lee of Utah, now threatening to filibuster any gun control legislation that comes to the Senate floor. So what does it mean for the future of gun control and the legislation that Harry Reid wants to bring forward? Joining us now, Stephen Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard and a Fox News contributor. So the Senate's on break. When they come back in session, Harry Reid plans to introduce legislation that would broaden, among other things, background checks and some other things, right?
Right.
And
yes, that's right.
And these 3 senators are saying no to that, or at least they want to filibuster it?
Yeah, I think they're basically doing 2 things here. One of them on substance and principle, and the other on sort of process and politics. On the substantive question, I think there's no doubt that these 3 senators believe that any of the kinds of things that are being discussed as included in this Harry Reid bill, including universal background checks, et cetera, are violations of the Second Amendment. And they oppose those things on principle. So that's one of the reasons that I think they're taking the stand. But I think there's also a political reason that they're taking the stand. They want to require a 60-vote threshold in order for the Senate to consider this bill, so that these Democratic senators from red states or moderate senators have to actually go on record voting saying that they favor these things, because Harry Reid is going to allow a number of liberal amendments that allow these Democratic senators, some of whom are up for re-election, to vote against, for instance, the assault weapons ban, right, what have you. So, they can have their bona fides that way on sort of being pro Second Amendment. This would force them to cast a difficult vote beforehand.
This all gets into the arcane workings of the Senate, and I think it's hard for a lot of people, myself included, to understand it sometimes. So I just want to go over that again. So the thinking is that Harry Reid would allow say a ban on assault weapons to be offered as an amendment to the bill, so that some of the Democrat senators who are coming up for re-election, people like Mark Begich in Alaska, would be able to vote no on that and go home to their home voters and say, look, I voted against that ban on assault weapons.
Right. I think that's exactly right. I mean, look, to give Harry Reid the benefit of the doubt, I mean, he has said to Dianne Feinstein that he would allow this vote, and I think he's going to allow some kind of a vote on an assault weapons ban. And then you'll have nobody thinks it will pass. No, nobody really thought it would pass, I think, going back. I mean, even in the aftermath of the Newtown shootings, I think it was always a pretty tough sell. And this is a way, I think, for Republicans to make those Democrats, after they vote in favor of, or after they oppose something like that, it also gets them to have to cast a vote that will be difficult, saying, in effect, I'm voting to bring this to the floor. I'm voting to have this considered by the Senate.
But does anybody think that 3 senators who say they are willing to filibuster could completely block this legislation?
Well, if it doesn't get 60 votes, I mean, they can require it to get the 60 votes necessary. And if it doesn't get 60 votes, I mean, what they're basically trying to do is require this supermajority, so that it's not just a simple majority, not just 50 votes, but it's 60 votes, which adds the additional senators, Democratic senators, in all likelihood, to have to vote for this. There was a test vote on this, again, another sort of procedural play last week, when the Senate was considering all sorts of budget amendments, and it passed only 50 to 49. So they were sort of enthused about that and wanted to take this one step further.
And given the fact that Harry Reid comes from Nevada, a sort of gun-friendly state, I mean, he's in a bit of a box himself when it comes to some of the votes and the amendments that he offers on gun control legislation.
Well, he sure is. I mean, he's never been very enthusiastic about any of these additional measures, even though he's sometimes voiced support for at least allowing them to have the vote in his role as a leader of the Democrats. But you're right. I mean, and he goes back. He'd gotten A ratings from the NRA in the past and had been supported by the NRA in the past. So I think this makes it a little bit difficult for Harry Reid and for people like Harry Reid who come from red states with strong Second Amendment traditions. It makes it difficult for those senators to go and say, I support additional gun control measures.
That confrontation between longtime Senator Dianne Feinstein and the relative newcomer Ted Cruz That's going to be replayed a long time on television clips, I think. Stephen Hayes.
Think so.
All right, Stephen Hayes from the Weekly Standard. Thank you.